Good Little Boys Go to Heaven, Part 2 of 25. Jack Had a Good Heart. Spring 1939, East Texas. I had no idea what to do. I stood in the water watching Jack. The girl grabbed my shirt sleeve and began pulling me to the bank. She let go of my shirt and then stepped into the bank. I stepped into the bank as well. She turned and walked in the opposite direction from where I stood. I turned and slowly began to walk toward the woods. The horror of what I had done sank deeper and deeper into my mind. How had things come to this? I couldn't understand. I continued my walk until I approached the edge of the woods that led to the clearing, that led to the house we lived in. I still lived there. Jack didn't. When I reached our house, I went into my room through the open window. I lay in bed, fully clothed and probably still wet. I did not know how I fell asleep, but I did. When morning came, I went back out through the still open window. I sat down by the side of our house and waited. The Jefferson boys found him near the bridge. He had floated down the river about a mile from where I stood in the water, watching him float away. They found him just after sunrise. The Jefferson boys were younger than I by a few years. Both were high-strung to the point they'd annoy you after a short while. I can only imagine their excitement at seeing a body floating in the river. I can see them jumping around like a couple of monkeys excitedly drunk. They were monkeys who were close brothers. That's what Jack and I should have been. Looking at the two together, you could tell each monkey enjoyed the other's company. I felt relieved when I heard Jack had been found, and I felt fear. Somehow I'd gotten this vision in my head of him floating along for eternity. But he'd been found, he'd be buried, he'd be cried over, and he'd be missed. And still I felt fear. I was still afraid of him. There should have been another way. I should have found another way. But I was afraid of him, and fear controlled my actions. Things Jack had done, things I had done, I didn't understand any of it. I knew to be afraid, but I had no idea what to fear. I was just scared. And I did something that I can only cry about now. My tears do my brother Jack no good. Mama. I was the one who had to try to console her. I was still sitting by the side of our house when the sheriff's car drove up. She nearly fell on the spot when she answered his knock on the door. Miss Juliet, there is sad news for you. Please sit down. They walked into the parlor. She hadn't said a word. The sheriff helped her to her chair, knelt beside her, and held her hand. He said his piece. We can't find any evidence to indicate how your boy got the cut over his left eye. He might have hit his head diving into the water. Looks like a rock struck his head. That's what the doctor says. About a fist-sized rock, he says. There's no sign of anyone having been at the river we can find. He was fully dressed, and we found no clothing from anyone else. We searched the entire area around the bridge. We searched for several miles up and downstream. We think he went into the water after dark, and as best I can tell, he was alone. Why would he have been at the river? Or maybe on the bridge? Mama shook her head. I don't know where he was or what he was doing. He was a grown boy. He went his own way. He kept his own company as best I could tell. We never could talk. I don't know what he was doing at the river or on the bridge. I'll keep looking into the matter, but I've asked all around and no one knows what might have happened. I'm sorry, Miss Juliet. I don't know, but I'll keep asking. He bowed his head to her and then took his leave. I went over to her and replaced him at her side. I didn't say anything. I held her hand in both of mine. I started to cry. Before, she had only looked around stunned, seemingly not recognizing anything in her sight. When she looked at me, she started crying as well. She pulled me close to her and held me. We didn't pass a word between us. She knew the problems Jack and I had always had between us. Mama pulled her hand from mine and rose. She went into the kitchen and put the kettle on the fire. I followed her but stopped at the doorway to watch her. She stood at the store waiting for the water to boil. After it had begun to boil, she turned the fire off, approached the door where I stood. She looked at me, gave a broken-hearted smile, and asked, "What has your brother done now?" She walked past me, leaving the kitchen. She went into her bedroom and shut the door behind her. I went up to the door and put my ear to it. I couldn't hear her crying. I went back into the kitchen and sat down at the table. The Jefferson boys were fishing in the river. Jack and I used to go fishing at the river with our old man in our younger years. The old man was drinking even then, but was still good company. He'd tell us stories about his family. His grandfather arrived in the county with nothing but the shirt on his back, worked the land for the McDonald family, saved much of what he earned, and later bought some land. His father's generation worked the land and built it into a respectable farm. He said they had cows and chickens and grew crops. He says his family had always been hard workers. The work ethic didn't rub off on my father. He thought, he hoped, he found an easier way. He told some uncomplimentary stories about Mama's family, particularly about Mama's father. Mama's father was the source of all of my father's problems, at least in the stories my father told us. I was just white trash as far as that man was concerned. Hell, he was just a generation or two up from white trash himself. He never gave me my chance to prove myself. It was supposed to be me who took my family from digging in the dirt, but her father never gave me my chance. They became fat on what they had stolen from others, and then they had the nerve to call themselves respectable. Your mother took me to meet him, and he wouldn't even shake my hand. He just stood looking at me like I was a worthless dog. Wouldn't have me in his home or sit with me at the dinner table. I figured he might love his daughter more than he hated me, but instead of accepting me, he came to hate his daughter. What kind of man is that? My father wasn't born white trash, but he lowered himself to it. I had fallen asleep sitting at the kitchen table. Mama touched me on the shoulder to wake me. "Have you had any supper? Let me fix you something to eat." "I already had supper, Mama. Yours is there." "I don't want anything right now. Put it away and have it later." You boys spent half your lives down at the river, it seems. I always worried about Jack. I always feared that he wouldn't live to see old age. He was always so wild and reckless that I'd hoped he would grow out of it. I feared he wouldn't. Now I know for sure that he won't. She took a seat next to me, put her head down and began to cry. Not a loud, raucous type of cry, but a soft lamentation. I moved my seat closer to hers and put my arm around her. She put her head on my shoulder. I knew she wanted to talk. As painful as it was to listen, I had to be there for her. "You were always my baby. Jack was your daddy's boy when he was small. He grew up to be big like your daddy. I don't know what happened with your daddy. He got lost in the bottle. He came from a family that worked their own land. He wouldn't do anything with the land we have. My daddy gave us this land. He never approved of the match between your daddy and me. That's all he would give us. He warned me against marrying your daddy. He said your daddy came from a sorry lot and that your daddy was the sorriest of the lot. Your daddy told me my daddy would come around. He said he'd show my daddy that he was wrong about him. I'd always dreamt of a large church wedding. We got married by a justice of peace at the courthouse. The day after we married, I got word my daddy wanted to see me. I met him in his office at the bank. He reached out his hand to me with a paper in it. It was the deed to this land. Your daddy told me my daddy was already coming around to see things our way. That was the last time I saw my daddy alive. You never got along with your brother, did you? It doesn't really matter now. We're all united by death. You understand why your brother picked on you, don't you? It's just the way kids are. Bullying is the currency some kids use to buy the deference of other kids. You know he never meant you any harm. Jack had a good heart. It wasn't always easy to see where his head was. But Jack had a good heart. It was your daddy's influence on him. He wasn't drunk with alcohol the way your daddy often was. He was drunk with the power he saw himself having over you. He never meant you any harm, though. Jack never meant me any harm, she said. I never believed that was true. I don't think it now. It was more than just the big kid picking on the little kid between Jack and me. Mom had known about the colored girl Jack had attacked, or Jack nearly drowning me. She would have felt different. I'm unsure why she felt she had to defend Jack to me. Maybe she was trying to defend Jack to herself. What's done is done, Mama. Whatever it was between Jack and me is done now. It is ended. I guess. She looked at me and nodded her head. I wanted to confess my guilt to her. I wanted to confess that I was responsible for Jack's drowning. How could I, though? I thought my silence was the only thing that could keep her alive. That's what I told myself. That's how I justified my silence. To have one son drowned by the other was more than even her faith in God could bear. She never asked any questions about the gash over Jack's eye. In fact, when the sheriff mentioned it and he said he'd look into it, she just blankly nodded her head. He gave a questioning look, but then went on his way. I'm not sure if he looked into it or not. Neither the sheriff nor my mother asked me about Jack's death. The first person they should have both asked should have been me, but I was never asked. I can think about the past, the earliest years I can remember. I can remember happy times for Jack and me. I remember Jack diving into the water at the river. He thought himself something of an expert diver. I remember the fishing. There was a lot of fishing. Every day practically our father would take us to the river. We fished every day, even though none of us liked eating fish. At first we'd take what we had caught home to Mama to show her. After it became apparent to the three of us that Mama would cook what we had, and we had to eat it, we started throwing them back. I'm not sure which came first, our father's persistently sour mood or his habit with the bottle. I remember him sober, and I also remember his mood being light. But both disappeared, seemingly in a day. I tried to stay away from him, but then he lost interest in us. He would argue about Mama about everything, from planning in the fall to missing meals to coming into her bed stinking of alcohol. She often told him if he came home drunk, he'd be sleeping outside. Finally, he stopped coming home. Jack won't be coming home either. I don't know Jack. Saying I was afraid seems like saying nothing now. All I can say is nothing. He might have become the man Mama talks of, a better man than I could ever dream of becoming. Still, most likely you would have become our father, but maybe not. After all, I know you had a good heart. But that's it.